What's up, Taiwan? I'm Yvonne Young with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. U.S. President Donald Trump has just approved a new law that could pave the way for deeper ties with Taiwan. Our reporter Cadence Quaranta has been following the story and joins us live from Taipei. Cadence, what can you tell us about the bill?
Yvonne, it's called the Taiwan Assurance Implementation Act, and basically it requires the U.S. State Department to regularly review U.S. guidelines on engagement with Taiwan and then report to Congress. In those reports, officials have to explain how the guidelines deepen U.S.-Taiwan ties and identify ways that they could lift restrictions on engagement with Taiwan. The law isn't specific about what exactly those restrictions are, but they could involve things like high-level visits by U.S. officials to Taiwan. One of the bill's co-sponsors says that it could strengthen U.S.-Taiwan relations and send a message to China that the U.S. stands against its efforts to dominate the region. Now, the U.S. doesn't officially recognize Taiwan. Instead, it has diplomatic relations with China, but it does have unofficial ties with Taiwan, so that's what the bill is referring to here. And it does come at a relatively significant time. There's been some uncertainty about U.S. President Donald Trump's support for Taiwan recently. He's held several calls with Chinese President Xi Jinping and even met him in person in November, and he's expected to travel again to China next year. So this has some worried in Taiwan.
Cadence, so this new bill, presumably good news for Taiwan?
Yeah, so there's been an outpouring of support here in Taiwan. Taiwan's foreign minister said this morning that it's a step forward for U.S.-Taiwan relations.
对于双方面交往准则可以彼此更这个完整的互动包括其中到联邦机关洽公，或者是到我们代表处来这个互动这个包括台美关系正常化的进一步的发展，我们表示肯定跟感谢。
Taiwan's presidential office has also thanked the U.S. For its support. But on the other side of the strait, China is not too happy about the new bill. Beijing's Taiwan Affairs Office says that the bill interferes with its One China principle and China's internal affairs, and says it strongly opposes any official interactions between the U.S. and Taiwan. What we're looking at next is whether these reports to Congress do call for any relaxing of restrictions on U.S. engagement with Taiwan, or what exactly they say.
Thank you, Cadence. That was Cadence Quaranta live for us in Taipei. Taiwan's opposition parties have put the president's proposal for a record-high defense budget on hold.
就在今天，要塞进立法院的程序委员会。 贸然的要全国人民在完全不知道情况之下，要一个空白的授权。
Opposition lawmakers from the Kuomintang and Taiwan People's Party voted to keep the bill from being reviewed in the legislature later this week. They say the $40 billion special budget is being pushed through too quickly, and its details are not clear. The ruling Democratic Progressive Party says the opposition is deliberately trying to block the proposal.
国民党跟民众党针对所有保护台湾的法案或是预算都在挡一挡再挡，而根据他们自己提出来的卖台法案呢，就一路的冲。
The cabinet approved the proposal last week, saying the money would go toward domestic arms production, strengthening military resilience, and building a new air defense system known as the T-Dome. Taiwan's foreign minister says he looks forward to re-establishing official diplomatic relations with Honduras.
对于两位对台湾友好的总统候选人，我们也都保持有良好的互动。那我们也期待台湾跟洪都拉斯的关系能够在这个大选之后建立起基于平等互惠一个外交上面的一个关系。
Hondurans went to the polls earlier this week to choose their next president. Early results show the two candidates who've suggested bringing back official ties with Taiwan are currently in the lead. Salvador Nasrallah has explicitly pledged to restore ties if elected, while Nasri Afura has said he would move the country away from China. Honduras cut ties with Taiwan in favor of China in 2023, but disappointment has been brewing over how that switch has affected the Honduran economy. As of Wednesday morning, Nasrallah is slightly ahead with around 72% of the vote counted. At least 156 people are now confirmed dead in Hong Kong's deadly apartment fire, with dozens still missing. Police say they've arrested 15 people on suspicion of manslaughter. The fire started at an affordable social housing project last week and burned through 7 out of 8 buildings. The housing complex was undergoing massive renovation when the fire broke out, and authorities suspect unsafe construction materials contributed to the fire's spread. And to find out how last week's massive fire in Hong Kong may further test the Chinese government, Leslie Liao spoke with Yaqiu Wang, a fellow at the University of Chicago's Forum for Free Inquiry and Expression.
How has China reacted to the Hong Kong fires so far?
The Chinese government has already, issued several propaganda articles saying anybody who's raising questions about transparency and corruption should be, potentially investigated for national security reasons. So the government is already kind of know that people are angry about it. People will call for accountability.
We're seeing reports that there were multiple safety failures leading up to this fire. What's the government's role in those safety failures falling through the cracks?
Residents were complaining about the lax safety enforcement surrounding the building. So clearly that people knew something was wrong, and they urged the government to, look into the company's behavior, the contractors. The fire happened, people died. That was because the government didn't take seriously people's complaints, right? When you have a government that is not accountable to the people, right? And then, of course, it fosters corruption. When the government leaders are not elected by the people, they don't have to answer to the people's demands.
During a U.S. congressional hearing, you said that a fire in northwestern China in late 2022 caused some political challenges for Beijing. Are we seeing similar challenges unfold here?
I think it's similar in the sense that obviously that, when there's a fire, some safety regulations were not enforced, or measures were not enforced. So in that regard, the Urumqi fire or the Hong Kong fire are similar. That speaks to the government's failure. When there's no free expression, people can't freely criticize the government, can't freely express whatever they think the problem with the government. All those things, are the fundamentals of a democracy, of a free society, which is closely related to, how well managed, how well run, a city is, how accountable, how transparent the government is. It is a threat because the government knows that people are unhappy about the situation and people wanted to, speak up about the situation. So they are Beijing is preemptively sending the message to threaten the people that don't do that. You can be put in jail.
That was Yaqiu Wang, a fellow at the University of Chicago's Forum for Free Inquiry and Expression. U.S. envoys have met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow to discuss ending the war in Ukraine. Top negotiators are optimistic that peace is just around the corner, but for many Ukrainians suffering from deadly Russian strikes, peace may still be a distant concept. John Van Trieste reports.
A Russian drone hits a residential building in the eastern Ukrainian city of Kramatorsk Tuesday. Rescuers will later find a woman's body among the rubble. It's another life lost in Russia's nearly 4-year-long invasion of Ukraine. For people here, hope that peace will come soon. While around 800 kilometers away in Moscow, U.S. President Donald Trump's special envoy to Russia, Steve Witkoff, and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, have arrived for a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, part of months of efforts by the Trump administration to broker an end to the war. In the lead-up to the meeting, though, Putin's attention seemed to be fixed on war, warning Europe against getting involved in a conflict with Russia and reacting to Ukrainian attacks on Russian shipping.
Firstly, we would extend the range of our strikes on vessels and boats entering Ukrainian ports. Secondly, if attacks on Russian tankers continue, we would consider the possibility, I'm not saying we will do it, but we would consider the possibility of retaliatory measures against vessels of those countries that help Ukraine carry out such pirate actions. The most radical solution is to cut Ukraine off from the sea. Then piracy will be impossible for Ukraine in principle.
Before the Moscow meeting, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, on a trip to Ireland, said he was somewhat optimistic, but is still skeptical about Putin's intentions.
Putin, I mean, now he's thinking how to find new reasons not to finish this war. And we count on pressure from the United States and the people of the world. I think so. They are a very strong country.
So pleased to see you.
But on Tuesday, the long-awaited meeting took place over what a Kremlin aide said was 5 hours. He doesn't give much detail about what the two sides discussed, but he says one of the toughest issues, Russia's demands for Ukrainian territory, was one area the two sides still disagree on. Still, when a reporter asked whether peace was closer or further away, this is what he had to say.
Not further, that's for sure. But there's still a lot of work to be done, both in Washington and in Moscow. That's about it. And contacts between Moscow and Washington will continue.
But for people in Ukrainian cities like Kramatorsk, site of Tuesday's drone strike, not further doesn't mean close. Russian attacks kept interrupting rescue efforts at the building hit earlier in the day. And as another round of talks about ending the war concludes, the war itself grinds on. Dolphin Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan prosecutors are charging Tokyo Electron with national security and trade secrets violations in a case involving chip giant TSMC's most advanced technology. The Japanese-owned company is accused of failing to prevent staff from stealing TSMC's business secrets. It comes after one staff member was charged with conspiring to leak details about TSMC's 2-nanometer technology. Prosecutors say the company could face a fine of up to $3.8 million if convicted. Tokyo Electron told Bloomberg the indictment targets its Taiwan unit. It says it's working to verify the details. Former Digital Minister Audrey Tang is with Sweden to receive a 2025 Right Livelihood Award. The honor recognizes individual or groups for achievements in social or environmental change and is known as Sweden's alternative to the Nobel Prize. Tang was selected for her work on, quote, advancing the social use of digital technology to empower citizens, renew democracy, and heal divides. She's the first Taiwanese recipient. While in Sweden, Tang spoke about how to harness the power of artificial intelligence for good.
I believe we can steer AI away from addictive intelligence that lures people in through doom scrolling, through synthetic intimacy, into assistive intelligence, where AI systems are steered by the community in the service of communities.
Other Right Livelihood recipients this year include the groups Justice for Myanmar and Sudan's Emergency Response Rooms. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, take a look at pieces by Taiwanese artists exhibited at the FIG Bilbao, an international printmaking festival in Spain. I'm Yvonne Yang. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for sharing our passion for food and Taiwan. Veggie Island explores the vibrant world of plant-based cuisine.
Wow, this is amazing.
While Taiwan on the Rocks uncovers the stories and craftsmanship behind every sip.
Have you ever tried Taiwanese beer?
Are you ready to taste even more of Taiwan?